tend to forget their passwords easily. As user experience designers, our goal is to provide a reliable mechanism for users to easily regain access to their accounts in the case where they forget their password or for some reason they can't access their passwords manager. That's why we have the reset password flow in front of us. We've already created a sketch, and the next logical thing is for us to design and then prototype, which is a general flow for any UI project. So you first need to create your sketch, have a wireframe, convert to a high fidelity mockup, then finally prototype your design. Before we actually start designing, I will need to explain exactly how this flow is going to work. When the user comes to the login screen, the first thing the user can do is to enter their email, their password, and if it validates right, they can tap on the login button and it's going to take them to the home screen. They can choose to log in with their social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, or Google. If they don't have an account, then they can sign up or create a new account. What if they forgot their password? They tap on the forgot password link and it takes them to the next screen where they can enter the email with which they registered their account. It validates, then if it's okay, they can now tap on the request reset code. If they remember their password, they can choose to go back to the login screen by tapping on the login link, or they can tap on the back button or icon that is going to take them back to this login screen, back to the request code. So when you tap on the request reset code, it sends you a verification code. So the email with which you registered is going to receive that verification code. It could be a 4-digit code, 5-digit, or 6-digit or more, depending on the system. But in this case, it's a 4-digit code. So you need to enter the 4-digit code here. When you've entered the 4-digit code and it validates, you can now tap on the confirm button. If you did not receive the verification code, then you can tap on the resend code and it's going to resend the validation code to your email account. When you tap on confirm, then it takes you now to the next screen where you can reset your password. So you enter your new password and you repeat the same password in the next input box. So it needs to match. If it doesn't match, then you can't reset your password. If it matches, you tap on reset password. And if it's successful, it brings this feedback screen telling you that your password has been changed. You can now log in. Or if it's not successful, it's going to tell you that it wasn't successful. So you need to go back and maybe restart the process, or go back to the login screen or contact support in order for you to reset your password. So that's the simple flow for resetting the password. Now let's start creating our screens. The first thing we're going to do is to rename our page. So our current page name is Sketch, so we want to rename it to Mobile App. If you want to create websites, you can choose to add a new page. Now to rename this, we just double click on Sketch, call this Mobile App, tap on the enter key. When you're done, then if you want to add a new page, you just need to come to where we have pages, click on the plus button, and we're going to call this a website. On this canvas, we can add different frames or create different screens for a desktop application or website. But let's go back to our mobile app. Now, we're going to create a new frame. And the frame is going to represent our phone screen. So depending on the platform you're working on, iOS, Android, or if you're working on a hybrid app, you need to know the exact screen size. So either with experience, you know the screen size. Based on the research you carried out in the previous phases, you will know the screen size, or you can ask the developers and they're going to help you with the screen size that is going to be suitable. To create the frame or to create our screen, we'll come to where we have the frame tool. Click once. We have different presets here. So if you want to create a mobile app, you can choose any of the screen sizes, Android, iPhone. If you want to create a website, a web application or desktop application, you come to the desktop section and it has different presets here. But our focus is on the phone. So we're going to click on this and we're going to be using iPhone 8 Plus for our tutorial. We're going to click once to create a new screen. So this is our screen. I'll just bring it here. And we'll need to rename this to login. Great. Now that we have our login screen, the next thing we'll need to do is to create a layout grid. But before we do that, we need to understand what exactly a layout grid is. A layout grid creates some sort of a structure. So if you're a designer and you need to make sure that your elements are organized and aligned on your design, then you definitely need to be making use of a layout grid. A layout grid is made up of 4 parts. We have columns, we have gutters, we have margins, and we have rows. Before I get to explaining the different parts of a layout grid, I think we should create a layout grid first. How do we do this? I will need to zoom in. Make sure that your screen is selected. Then we are going to come to where we have layout grid under the design tab. Click on the plus button once and click on the grid icon once. We'll choose columns and we're going to give this a count of 4. We'll give it a margin of 16. Notice how the columns are changing. Notice how the spacing is also changing. And the last thing we're going to do here is to give it a gutter of 8. Okay. Now we have created our columns. So that is the first thing. So the first part of the column grid is a column. So the columns are just the vertical divisions on the screen. And the columns will vary depending on the device. So for mobile, you will see a 4-column grid. For tablets, you could see an 8-column grid. And for desktop or websites, you will see a 12-column grid. The margins will vary. So this is the margin. The margin is just the space between the contents and the edge of the screen. So this is our screen and these are the margins. So we have the margin left and the margin right. The gutter, which is what we gave 8 pixels, is just the space between the columns. So these little spacings between the column are what we call or what we refer to as the gutter. Now let's add the last part of a layout grid, which are rows. So in order to add a row, we need to come to the plus button, click once, and we'll come again where we have the grid icon, click once. We'll change this to rows, and we don't have to have a specific number, but just to keep it consistent, I'll give this 8 for the rows. The color should remain the same, the type should remain the same, and the margin is going to be 16. So this is what happened. This is the margin. It has a margin top and margin bottom. So for rows, we have margin top and margin bottom. And for columns, we have the margin left and the margin right. Now the gutter for the rows could also vary, but in this case, we'll still stick to 8. So remember that we had created this spacing value. So this is our layout grid. These are just the basic components of a layout grid. We have columns, again, just to recap, and we have gutters. We have margins, and we have rows. So because we want to be making use of the layout grid throughout all our screens, we need to create a style. In order to create a style, just like we did for our typography scale, color palette, box shadow, we need to come to where we have the style icon, click once, click on the plus button, and we're going to give this a name, which is going to be 4-column grid mobile. When you're done, you click on create style, and we have created a style that we can use across all our mobile screens. We've created a layout grid. Now the next thing we're going to do is to add our elements to our login screen, but we need a reference point, which is going to be the sketch we had earlier created. So I'll just bring down this image and I'm going to resize it. Okay, so we'll have to add a background to our login screen, and there are different ways to do that. We can drag and drop the image from our desktop to the canvas, or we can import it directly using the Figma import image feature. So that is what we're going to be doing. So make sure that the frame is selected. Come to where we have fill, we'll click on the square, and we are going to select the image icon here. So you could add a gradient, you could add a video, but this is going to be available for those who have subscribed to the pro version. So we want to add an image, so make sure that the image section is selected, and we're going to choose the image. Click once where we have choose image. We'll select the image. So if you don't have this image, I'm going to attach the link to this image in the description box, but you can use any image on your desktop. So make sure that it's selected, click on open, and it's going to automatically fill the image within the frame. Now, Figma has different options. You can adjust the image exposure, the contrast, you can change the temperature. If you're versed with editing images, I'm sure you're also versed with these terms. So you could fit the image proportionately to the frame, you could crop the image, or you could create a tile out of the image. But in this case, we want to leave it at fill, so it fills it proportionately. Okay, so this is just a sample of how you can add images to your projects or adjust the image. We have our image as a background. Now let's close this, and I want us to now add a rectangle inside because I don't want the background to stand out as much as it does right now. So in order to do this, we'll add a layer, come to where we have the ellipse tool, click on the drop down, and we're going to select a rectangle. Now we're going to draw a rectangle that fits within the column and the row grid. We don't want it to exceed the margin. So when you're done with this, we can just zoom out, but this is not enough, so I'll just bring it down. I want to give it a different look. Now the next thing we're going to do is to bring in this logo. Remember that this image is here to serve as a reference point. So our logo is under the design system page. I'll just click on that, select the logo. I'll just copy, Ctrl+C to copy, and I'll come back to my mobile app page and I'm going to hit Ctrl+V to paste it. So we're going to resize this. We need to make sure that this logo is within the frame. Currently, it's not within the frame. And how did I know? Because this is our frame, and this is the only element that is within the frame, which is the rectangle that we just created. But now our logo is not inside, so I want us to resize it first. We're going to resize it and give it a width and height of 120. Then we are going to make sure that it's inside. So I'll just bring it out, then drag it inside again. So it has put the logo inside the frame. Now I'll just bring this up, and I want to give this a circular look because right now it has a square. In order to do this, I'll make sure that the logo is selected. Then I'll come to where we have corner radius. We already created a border radius value, so I'll just come and select it where we have rounded. So this is a fully rounded value we had created where we have 999. I'll just click on it once and it's going to give it a circular look. Now, if I'm satisfied with this look, I will hit the center align icon so it centralizes the icon to the very center of the login screen. Now I'm comfortable with this and I want to add the title, welcome back. So I'll come to where we have the text tool, hit on it once, and I'm going to click within the frame and we're going to type in welcome back. So I won't be typing everything because I already created text. We'll be copying and pasting. Welcome back, that is the title, and I want to give this a style of the heading 4. I'm comfortable with this, so I will just increase the width of the text box. Now, I want this to be centered, so make sure that the text box is selected. Then we'll come to where we have center, and we're going to click on align to center. Perfect. The reason why we have our rows and column grid is to guide us on how to place this. So I'll just bring this up a little bit. We might adjust it later on, but for now I'm comfortable with this. The next thing I want to do is to make sure that there is some sort of a spacing between this rectangle and the text. So we're going to do a little bit of calculation. So this is selected and I want to subtract 16 pixels. So I want to subtract 8 pixels from the left and from the right so that it will have some sort of a margin from the rectangle. So make sure that the text box is selected, then come to where we have width. We're going to do a little bit of calculation, click within, and we'll give it a minus because we want to subtract 16 from the width. So we'll hit minus 16 and it has given us a width of 366. So I'm okay with this. I'm just going to align it again to the center. The next thing we're going to do is to add our input fields, because this is email and password. So remember that we had created input fields and it's under our component library. So how do we access this, or how do we find this? Currently our layers panel is selected. So now we need to move to the asset tab. So I'm going to click once on this And here we have all our design system. If we can't find it, like this means that it's just hiding inside a particular group. So right now I want to find the input field, and we had called this input. If you remember all the names you gave to all your components, you just need to search for that asset. All your components are registered as assets in Figma. So I'm looking for input. I'll just type in input, and it brings this. So I'll just bring this out. I'm okay with this for now. The next element we're going to need is this button. So I'll just type in button because we had called this a button. We had created this in a component. If you did not watch it, please go back and watch how to add buttons to your component library. So we are okay with this just for now. I want us to hide the layout grid because I want to make sure that the contrast between the text and the background is perfect. So in order to do that, make sure that your frame is selected. Come to where we had the layout grid, and we're just going to click on the eye icon to hide it. Now, let's work on the background. The background, we need to change the background to the cream white color we had earlier added to our color palette, which is this. Then next, we are going to give the corners a rounded feel. So make sure that the rectangle is selected. We'll come to where we have corner radius, and we're going to select 12. The next thing we're going to do is to duplicate this input field because we have the email and we have the password. So I'll just hit Shift and Alt on my keyboard and drag it down. So I'm okay with this. I'm going to now change the label here. So the label here is email, and the next is password. So we are okay with this. This already has the email icon here, but here we need to change this because it has a right icon and it has a left icon. So make sure that the input field is selected. Come to where we have right icon, and we're just going to click on the toggle switch here to switch on the right icon. Remember that we had added this still in our input field, so if you haven't watched that, please refer to it. I'm going to add a cat, so it's going to be easy for you to find that tutorial. So click on the right icon, the toggle switch once, and it's going to add the right icon. Now the next thing we're going to do is to change the icons. I'm going to zoom in. The password icon is to change, so make sure that this is selected. Then when it's selected, come to where we have the icons. So this is where we can swap the instances of our icons. Right now it's the envelope that is selected. If you know the name of your icons, you can just type it to find that icon. In this case, I know the name of my icon. So I'll just type lock, and this is going to be our icon to indicate that it's a password. And on the right, we are going to change this to the I. It's already highlighted here, so I'll just select it. Perfect. So this is for our email and our password. The next thing we'll need to do is to add a forgot password link. I'll just duplicate this, bring it down. I'm going to resize it so it fits within the width of our input field. Then I will call this forgot password. Now we need to change the text to a paragraph or to a paragraph style, but this is a link because we did not create so many styles. We just have to use a paragraph style for this instance. So forgot password, I'm going to align it to the left, and we are going to change the color to something different. Let's say the shade 1. So we are okay with this. Now we are not here focusing on the spacing between the various elements. We are going to get to that. The next thing we're going to do is to change the button label to login. So login, and I want us to resize this to fit the width of the input field. So the current width is 354, and I want this to be 354 too, so I'll just enter 354. Great. Things are still very scattered on our screen, but we are going to arrange everything. Now, what do we need to do? We need to add or continue with our social media options here. So I will duplicate this again, and we'll just give this or continue with, and we're going to centralize this, change the color to a dark gray shade. The next thing we need to do is to add our social media icons. So remember that we had added our icon library. If you haven't watched that tutorial, please refer to it. I'm going to add it in the description box and also as a card on the top right hand corner. So we want to add Facebook, Instagram, and Google. The first thing I'm going to do is type Facebook. Make sure that you know the name of your icons. And this is Facebook. Facebook has been added. I want us to adjust this. We are going to give this a height and width of 16. Make sure that the constraint proportions is turned on. And when you're done, you hit the enter key on your keyboard. The next thing we're going to do is to add a circle around the Facebook icon. So the easiest way to do this is to first of all add auto layout. We are going to make sure that the icon is selected, hit Shift and A on your keyboard. Then we are going to zoom in to see how we make the change. Auto layout has been added, so it has added a horizontal and vertical padding of 10, but I don't want it to be this. So we are going to change it to 8, and we'll change this to 8. We can leave this at 0, it doesn't matter for now. Now we're going to give this a stroke. Come to where we have the stroke panel, click on the plus icon to add a stroke. The width should remain 1. The color can change to dark gray. And we are going to change the roundedness because I want this to be a perfect circle. So still make sure that the icon is selected. Click on the corner radius and we're going to select 9999, which represents a fully rounded circle. So click on it and it has created a perfect circle. The next thing we're going to do is to change the feel of the icon itself to the dark gray that we just created. So we have our first social media icon here, Facebook. We'll duplicate this twice. Double click to select the icon. Come to where you can swap an instance of the icon. Then we can type Instagram inside. We'll select the Instagram icon and that changes for Instagram. And we're going to do the same thing for Google. Swap instance and Google is already visible, so we just select it. Great. So the last element we need to add here is don't have an account sign up. We'll duplicate this again and I'm going to reduce the width. Don't have an account. And I'm going to duplicate this. The reason why I'm duplicating this is because the sign up is going to be used in the future if you want to create a prototype. So if somebody clicks on the sign up, it's going to redirect or take them to the sign up screen. So we'll just say sign up. And we're going to align this to the left. We'll reduce this again. Now I'm going to group the two, give it an auto layout, and the horizontal gap is going to be 4. We'll just change this color to shade 1 so that it can make it look like a link. Okay, so I've added all our elements to our login screen. The reason why I did not focus on the spacing is because I want us to add the spacing based on sections. And we're also going to turn on our layout grid that we had made invisible because we wanted to focus on adding the elements. So we're going to select the login screen, come to where we have the layout grid, and we'll click on the eye icon again, and it makes it visible. Now that we have our elements in place, we're going to give each section different spacings. So we have the logo, the spacing between the logo and the main title, spacing between the main title and the input fields together with the forgot password, spacing between this section and the button, spacing between the button and continue with and the social icon because this all belongs to one section and this is another section. So let's start with the input fields. So we'll select these 3 and we're going to hit Shift A to give it an auto layout and make sure that we apply a variable of 16. So it's going to give it 16 pixels for the spacing. The next thing we are going to do is to group this and we're going to hit Shift A to give it a spacing of 24 pixels and we'll align it to the center. and we'll group or continue with together with the social icons. Hit Shift A, give it a spacing of 16 pixels. So we'll have this section, we have this section, and we have this, and this. The next thing we are going to do is to make sure that the spacing between the title and the input field is 24 pixels. So select both, hit Shift A, and we are going to give it 24 pixels for the spacing. Now we're going to have equal spacing between this section, the button, continue with, and don't have an account. So we're going to select this, hit Shift A, and we are going to give it a spacing of 40 pixels. So you need to scroll down to find 40, and we are good to go. Make sure that it's aligned to the center and aligned to the center of the rectangle. So I've selected both the rectangle and the elements that we added, and we are going to hit align to vertical centers. Great. So I'm going to adjust the rectangle so that it fits within the rows and avoids the gutters. We've created our first screen and we are good to go. Let's hide the layout grid to see how it looks. I think it looks okay. And the next thing we're going to do is to create the forgot password screen. So we're going to get rid of this screen and we're going to bring down this image. To make things easy, we already have a base. We're just going to duplicate the screen and we'll rename this to reset password. The next thing we are going to do is to make sure that we rename this title to reset your password. But before we do that, let's ungroup this section. So make sure that this is selected, then hit Ctrl and backspace on your keyboard. We're going to change the title to reset your password. Okay, I want us to still ungroup this, so I'm going to still hit Ctrl and backspace to ungroup this. I just wanted to take out the parts that are not necessary here. So what are we not going to be using? I'm still going to hit ungroup. We will not be needing the password. We won't be needing forgot password. This we won't be needing also, but we're going to be needing one of the icons here. So I'll just hit Ctrl backspace to ungroup again. Ctrl backspace to ungroup. So I'll just delete this, select these three and delete because we won't be needing it. We'll be needing this section, we'll be needing this, and we'll be needing another text box below, reset your password. So first thing I'm going to do is to take this up because I want us to create a back button. So I'm making sure that the icon is aligned to the starting point of the first column and the starting point of the first row. Now we're going to change the icon of Facebook to the back arrow. Double click to select, go to where we can swap our instance, and we're going to search for the back icon. So make sure that you know the name. I'll just type back and it brings me this icon. So this is what I want. I'll just click once. And we'll need to change this to a fill, the circle. Make sure that the circle is selected. Come to where we have fill. Click on the styles icon because we want to select one of the predefined colors. And we're going to select white. We could still select cream white, but in this case, I just want us to use white. Now let's take out the stroke. So still making sure that the icon is selected. Come to where we have the stroke and we're going to click once on the minus button and it's going to take out the stroke. I'm okay with the look of the back icon for now. The next thing we're going to do is to add the text that is going to go here. So I already have a predefined text, but it might need a little bit of modification. So I will shift this down and we're going to duplicate this. So Alt and Shift to drag it down. And we are going to give this a paragraph style. Okay, I'll just copy the text right now. And I'm going to paste it inside here. So Control V to paste. The reason why it pasted was because of the alignment I had chosen here. So I want it to align to the top. I'll just bring it back down. So enter the email address you used when creating your Alpha Springs account and we'll send a code to reset your password. Very simple and straightforward. So I'm okay with this. We need to make sure that the same spacing we use between the title and the email box is going to be applied to the title and the text box below. So we're going to select both, reset your password, and the subtitle or the description. Hit Shift and A on your keyboard, and we are going to give this a spacing of 24. So let's just refer to this. Yes, so we made use of a spacing of 24. Great. Now I'll just bring this down. And I want us to use the same spacing here, which is also, so here we are now looking at this as one section, another section, another section. So here we're going to give it a spacing of 40. So select this 3 and hit Shift and A, and we're going to attribute a spacing of 40 here. Now, I think this looks fine. The last thing we're going to do is to change the label of the button to request reset code. And remember, your password is going to go below here. So let's start with request reset code. Remember your password. So there's a question here. If you remember your password, then you can go back to the login screen. I'll just increase the width and we'll have login here. This is not aligned properly, so I will just select everything and make sure that it's aligned to the center of the frame. Great. So I'll just select these two and hit Shift and A to give it an auto layout. I just noticed that I did not spell reset right, so I'll just adjust this. And we'll need to turn off the layout grid because I want us to make some adjustment on the fill for the inputs and for the text that we just added. So make sure that the frame is selected, then go to where we have the column grid, hide it, and we select this text. We are going to give this a dark gray shade. But for the input, we want to change the label to the dark gray shade. So this is going to be, let's give it this dark gray. We'll come to the login screen and do the same thing. We're going to give it a dark gray shade and another dark gray shade. Okay, I think I'm comfortable with the look right now. So we are done with the reset password screen. The next screen we are going to create is enter reset code. I'll just delete this, then we're going to move this to the left. So I'm going to duplicate this screen because we are going to be using some of the elements from this screen. Okay, and I'm going to bring this down for reference just as we did with the very first and second screens. Now the next thing we're going to do is to give this a title of enter reset code, and the text here we'll just copy it. You're almost there. Control V to paste. So you're almost there. We'll send a 4-digit code to your email. This. So this is the email. We'll just change the color to black to make it stand out just a little bit. We'll have to remove this and we'll have to change the label here. So we're going to ungroup like we did the previous time. Control backspace to ungroup. And we'll delete this because we don't need this here. But we're going to turn on our layout grid again because we need it. We'll create our first box. It's going to be 4, so we'll just give this a width of 64. And the height is going to be the height of this row, so it's 81, but I think I'm going to make it to be 80. Great, so I like this. I'll just duplicate it, Shift and Alt, Shift and Alt. So I'm good with this. I'm going to hit Shift A to give this an auto layout, and we are going to centralize this. I want the 3 rectangles we just created to have a radius of 4, and it's going to have a stroke with the color dark gray too, and a fill of white. Okay, so this dark gray is too loud. I think I'm just select light gray instead of the dark gray. I'll hide this just to see the change that we have made. Okay, so I'm fine with this for now. The next thing we are going to do is to add the resend code link. So I'll just duplicate this. Resend code. We're going to give this the same shade we have been giving all the links. So make sure that resend code is selected. Come to where we have the fill, and we'll give this shade 1. Now, resend code has an underline, but at the moment, the paragraph style doesn't have an underline. So we're going to unlink this and give it its own style. So make sure that resend code is selected, just resend code. Come to where we have the paragraph style. We're going to hit the detach style icon once, and it disconnects the style. So which means that if in case you make any change to the typography scale on our local variables, it's not going to affect this. This is always going to remain the same because it has been disconnected from the current styles. Now, with this being selected, I'm going to come to where we have the 3 dots for more options, and we are going to come under where we have decorations. We're going to select underline because that is the style we have currently on our sketch. Now, the last thing we're going to do is to take this out, and we're going to rename this label to confirm. Great. So I think I'm okay with everything on the screen. Let's see what we have left out. The back button is still there. Our frame is still maintained. The title, the description, and every other thing is fine. So I think we are good to go. Only thing we need to adjust now is the spacing. So the same thing we did here, we're going to give this a spacing of 40. And this is first of all going to have a spacing of 24. So first of all, we're selecting this tool, hit Shift A, and we're going to select 24 from our variables. The next thing is the spacing between the button, this section, and this section should be 40. So we're going to select this, and this, hit Shift and A for auto layout again, and we're going to give it a spacing of 40. So I think this is good. And you notice that we are trying to be consistent across all our screens. Now we need to make sure that we rename our frame to reset code because this is supposed to be the verification code. So we have to enter here, enter reset code or enter verification code. So for consistency, we just say enter reset code. Okay, so we are done with this screen. I'm going to delete this. The next screen is going to be the reset password screen. So we are going to duplicate. Which screen should we duplicate? Let's look at the similarities. We're going to duplicate this screen, the login screen. So I'll just drag it, Alt Shift, and we are going to rename this first. Let's not make the same mistake we made the last time. We're going to rename this to reset password, or we could call this create new password. Create new password. So we will not get confused with this screen because we already called this reset password. So let's not give the same label to this too. I'm done with this. I'm going to press enter. Now the next thing we're going to do is to bring this down. Let's bring this down. Remember that we always need a point of reference. I will just resize this. And we are going to give this a title of new password. So this is a very good scenario. There are times that you may work on your sketch and when you start designing, 1 or 2 things might change, but it might not be that much of a change. So we've changed the title and now we're going to add a description under. So I'll just copy this and drag it inside so it automatically takes in the auto layout values. But we'll still need to adjust it. already have this text set somewhere. I'll just copy and paste it. Control V to paste again. So I'm good with this, and the only thing we need to change here now is we need to take out this section. We need to take out these two sections because it's not really needed. And let's see, new password, confirm new password, reset password. So I think we need to take out the email, but let's just duplicate the password section first. Control D, and we'll delete this. Yeah, so we'll call this new password, and we're going to call this confirm new password. Great. And the last thing is going to be reset password for the label of our button. Okay, so I think we have created the second to the last screen, and we are going to do one more thing, which is to create the success feedback screen. So if somebody succeeds in resetting their password, you need to take them to this screen. So we are going to delete this, and we'll just duplicate this last screen. We'll not be using the elements there, but we are going to be using the screen itself and the background. We'll just delete this and this. Delete this too. Okay, so we're going to use a different method to create a frame. We'll duplicate this. I'm just bringing it down so we can use this as a point of reference, just like we did in the past screens. And we will need to add an image here. It could be an image, it could be an icon, a title, a description, and a button. So I already have my icon. I'll just drag and drop it inside our canvas. We'll be using this icon, and we'll be using text, but let's focus on this first. So this is going to be our icon to depict that we have successfully resetted our password, and we're going to give this a dimension of 120 by 120 for the width and the height, and we'll just bring this in, make sure that it's within the frame. Okay, so our title here is success, so we need to rename this frame to success. Enter. I want us to change this color, but we are going to change it later. Now we need to bring in the heading and the description. We just copy these two. I'm going to select both, hit Alt to duplicate. I'm going to drop it inside this frame. So I need to make sure that it's inside the frame. I'm going to come back to my layers tab and look at the frame. This is the frame, and these are the two elements I just dropped in. This is fine. And the last thing we're going to need is a button. So I will just duplicate this, Alt, and I'm going to drop it inside the frame. Okay, so I think we have all the elements we need here. So I will just rename this to password changed successfully. I'll just drag this up so that we can see what we are doing. And this, we're going to change it to Control V. Great, you have successfully updated your password. So I'll just add a comma. Or no, let's add an exclamation point here. Now it's time for us to arrange to make sure that our screens look organized. So I'm going to turn our layout grid on, select password change successfully and the description, hit Shift A, and make sure that I give it a value of 24 for the spacing. I'll just bring this down a little bit. I'm going to select this, and this. I'm going to hit Shift A to give it a spacing of 40. So the gap is going to be 40, and I want this to be aligned to the center. So I need to make sure that it's aligned to the center. Great. Now I want this to have a padding top, bottom, left, and right. But in order for us to see how this changes, we'll need to add a fill to our selection. So with this selected, we'll come to where we have fill. I will go to our style and select one of our predefined colors, which is white. So that's the fill, and we will need to make sure that we add our padding. With this still being selected, come to where we have horizontal and vertical gaps. So we're going to click on the icon to apply one of our variables, and it's going to be 40 pixels for the top and the bottom, and it's going to be 20 pixels for the left and right. So 20 pixels seems like a lot. I'm still going to take it down a little bit. Click on where we have 20 pixels. I'm going to just choose 12 pixels. So it makes it a little bit smaller. And we're going to give this rounded corners of about 16 pixels. Corner radius, 16 pixels. Great. So I think I like how it looks now. I'm just aligning now to the center vertically and horizontally. And let's see, I want us to add a drop shadow. Let's turn off the layout grid again. We'll add a drop shadow. So one of the drop shadows we had created earlier is part of our style library. Make sure that the rectangle with its elements are selected, and we are going to come to where we have effects. Click on the effect styles, and we're going to apply a drop shadow. It's very subtle. Now this icon is a vector icon, is SVG. So if it's an SVG icon, we can change the colors within Figma. All you need to do is to make sure that the icon is selected, and it's going to show you all the colors that have been used in this particular icon. So I want to change the border, and I want to change the fill. So for the border, I will just give it one of these shades, dark gray. And for the fill, I want it to blend into the current brand colors. So the first color I'm going to choose, I will just give this shade 3. And the second color, I'll give it shade 2. Okay, so I think I like how it looks now. And the last thing we're going to do on this screen is to change the label of the button to return to login. So if I succeed in resetting and I tap on return to login, it takes me back to login screen where I can log in now with my new password. Now that we have all our screens in place, we have created a high fidelity mockup. It's not perfect, but it's good for what we want to do right now. We need to move on to creating a prototype. So I'll just delete this. We don't need this anymore, and we don't need these screens again. So I'll just delete all of them. Our focus now is going to be on the 5 screens we just created. So in order to create a prototype, we're going to go now to the prototype tab, click on it once, and it takes us to the prototype. Now the first thing we're going to do is to create a flow. So select the first screen, because this is where we are going to start with our flow. So in order for somebody to be able to reset their password, they first need to access the login screen. So our first interaction is going to start from the login screen. And with the login screen selected, we're going to come to where we have flow starting point and click on plus. So you can have as many flows as you want, and you can rename the flow. So let's rename it to reset password. At least it tells us that this is what we want to do. So if you've added a flow and you have many screens and you want to change the flow to another screen, let's say that you want your flow to start from the reset password screen, all you need to do is to take this section and drop it here. And it's going to make reset password your first interaction for any user. You see, it changed it to reset password. So it's saying that reset password screen is your starting point for your flow. But let's undo this because we are starting from the login screen. So I'll just take this and drop it back to the login screen. From the login screen, our flow starts with forgot password. So click on forgot password. And we're going to make sure that the plus button appears. Now with the plus button appearing, we'll click on it once and we'll drag it to our next screen. It tells us that if you forgot your password, it was going to take you to the next screen where you can enter your email. So we'll drag it and drop it in the next screen. And our trigger is going to be on click, navigate to the reset password screen, and our animation or transition is going to be smart animate. So we'll have different animations here. It could be moving. You see the way it indicates how it's going to look like. It could be moving to the left, to the right, from the top or from the bottom. And it could be move out, it could be sliding, It depends on what you want, but in this case, we're going to just stick to Smart Animate. From the reset password screen, you can enter your email, and if you succeed in entering your email, you can request for a code. So when you request for a code, they will send you a verification code that is going to be entered in the next screen where we have enter reset code. So the settings are still going to remain the same. The trigger is going to be on click, navigate to enter reset code, and the transition is going to be Smart Animate. Still on the reset password screen, if you remember your password, you can go back to the login screen. So we need to make sure that if I tap on the login screen, it takes me back to the previous screen. So I'll just double click to select this, select the plus button, and we're going to drag it back to this screen. So it's going to take me back to the login screen. So on click, navigate to the login screen, Smart Animate, everything remains the same. Nothing to change there. Good. Now the last thing we're going to do on the screen is to make sure that if I'm also on the screen and I want to go back, I can either tap on the login link here or I can tap on the back button here. So since the back icon here and the back icon here are going to have the same functionality, we're going to apply the same interaction to them. So we're going to select both. Select the first icon, hold down the shift button, select the second icon, and we are going to come to the prototype panel and we're going to click on interaction. So under interaction, we're going to click on the plus button and we're going to add a universal interaction for this. So when I tap on this, the kind of interaction I want is going to take me back. So anytime I click on this button, wherever this button is found, it's going to take me back to the previous screen. We are done with this section. Now we're going to move on to the next section where we enter the reset code. So if you enter the reset code and you're successful, you can now click on confirm or tap on confirm, and it takes you to the new screen where you can create your new password. But what if you cannot, or what if you do not receive your code? You can tap on resend code and it's still going to maintain the same screen. So I'll just click on the plus button and redirect to the same screen. Nothing is going to change. I had to insert this because it's generally a good practice for a user to receive feedback if the requested code fails to deliver to the email or not. So this could be in the form of a pop-up message or a snack bar. We go now to the next screen, which is to create a password. So you have created your new password and you have confirmed your new password. Then you can now tap on the reset password button and it's going to reset your password. If you're successful, it's going to redirect you to the success screen. If you're not successful, it will redirect you to a failed screen. We did not create that, but a good practice is for you to have all your feedbacks designed. So in this case, we have just a success screen design. We need to prototype this with the reset button selected. Click on the plus icon and we're going to drag it to the next screen, which is a success screen, and we are good to go. So everything remains the same. On click, navigate to success screen, Smart Animate. Great. Now the last interaction is going to be to return to the login screen. So if you have reset your password successfully, the last thing you can do now is to use that password to log in into your account. We'll click on the return to login button and I'll just zoom out a little bit because we want to link or connect the screen to the first screen. So with the button selected, click on the plus icon and we're going to drag this to the very first screen that we created, which is a login screen. The setting remains the same. The trigger on click navigates to login and Smart Animate. So we've just created a basic prototype for the login or the reset password flow. Now we can test this out to see if it works. With everything set, we'll now come to where we have the presentation view. We're going to click on the play icon once, and it's going to open a presentation view for us to see and to test our prototype. Okay, so this is what our prototype looks like now, but what if we want to actually see how it's going to look on a mobile phone? I will have to go back to the screen here and we're going to choose a device. So under prototype, make sure that you choose a device and you need to remember the device you were using. So in this case, we're making use of iPhone 8 Plus. Under device, click on the drop down and we're going to select iPhone Plus. So this is it. You can change the background, you can change the model to silver, to gray, or to gold. In this case, we just leave it at gold, and we're going to preview again. Great, this is exactly how our screen is going to look like if you were to use this on an iPhone Plus. Now let's test out to see if our prototype works. So the first thing was forgot password. So if you forgot your password, you need to click here. But what if you don't know where to click on? So all you need to do is to click outside, and Figma is going to indicate hotspots. So these are particular interactive spots that you had already created in your prototype. It's just going to guide you. So even if you're sharing this prototype with somebody and the person doesn't know where to start, if the person clicks outside, it's going to indicate to them exactly where they are going to start from. So it's indicated that we need to start from here. So I'm going to click on forgot password. And this is the next screen. So we're going to test out the back buttons. If I forgot my password, or if I remember my password, I can go back. If I forgot, I'm going to click again, and it's going to take me to the screen. I can still click on the login link, and it's going to take me back. We're going to go back again to the forgot password screen. Now from here, if I enter my email, a valid email, I can request for a reset code. I enter my code, and I can resend the code if I did not receive it. My code is valid. I click on confirm, and I can now create my new password. New password, confirm new password, reset password. So I'm going to click on the button, and great, I've successfully changed my password. I now need to return to the login screen to enter my new password. So guys, this is how you create a mobile app and prototype a simple reset password flow. It's been a roller coaster, and I know it's not been easy starting from the design system to this point, but I hope that you've been able to learn something or learn a lot or add to your skills while you were following with me. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to share this with your friends.